We're now in the 6th week of the Greg Fertuck murder trial in Saskatoon. The 68-year-old is accused of killing his wife, Sherry, 6 years ago. Police tricked Fertuck into disclosing that he shot his wife by posing as criminals. It's a technique called a Mr. Big Sting, and we're learning now from the undercover officer who ran the sting. Dan Zakreski has been following the trial and joins us from the courthouse. Dan, what's the latest from the trial?
Well, Fiona, what's been happening now is we're getting a real clear sense of how the RCMP executed this Mr. Big Sting. Now, the undercover officer who's been on the stand so far this week is the officer who was designated to be Greg Fertuck's best friend in this Mr. Big Sting. Now, the police ran 136 staged interactions with Greg Fertuck, and they were all designed to convince him that he was a member of a criminal organization. Now, the officer that we're talking about was directly involved in 115 of these scenarios. So what that means is we're getting a real detailed blow-by-blow breakdown of how they executed this sting.
So what are we learning about these scenarios?
Well, Fiona, that they're complicated and they're all connected. You have to appreciate that the RCMP officers who were involved in this, in these scenarios, they knew that they were being recorded and that these scenarios were going to be played in court and were going to be dissected by defense lawyers. And that's what's been happening. So all of these scenarios are really carefully scripted. There's nothing willy-nilly. Now, if you take a step back and look at them en masse, what we're finding is a character who's introduced in scenario 8 will suddenly reappear in scenario 15, in scenario 30, in scenario 45. And each time they're reintroduced, it's to achieve a specific end. And that end is to have Greg Fertuck meet with the crime boss, the Mr. Big in this scenario, and disclose what happened to his wife, Sherry. The other thing too is if you take a step back from this and just look at it, the weirdness of what was happening to Greg Fertuck is just difficult to describe.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, these officers were trying to convince him that he was a member of a sophisticated criminal organization. And like any good story, they were selling it by showing, not telling. So you had Greg Fertuck taking road trips. He would be believing he was taking stolen cars to North Battleford. They would fly him to Vancouver. They would fly him to Winnipeg. They'd drive to North Battleford, to Medicine Hat, to Lethbridge. And in each of these trips, he believed he's moving hot diamonds. He's going to an undercover poker game. He's moving fake passports, selling stolen cigarettes. And in each of these criminal scenarios, he's meeting people. People who are connected with the gang, people who owe the gang money, people who are doing jobs for the gang. And in each one of these cases, they're all police. It's all this massive charade. I think when I step back and look at it, the scenario that resonated the most with me was a retirement scenario. One of the things they wanted to convince Fertuck was you could leave the gang. This isn't like the mafia where you only leave in a coffin. You could retire and go on and live with your life. So they set up a retirement party, a fake retirement party, and they did it at a local bar. So Fiona, just picture every retirement party you've ever been to in a bar. They have the little room in the back. You've got about 15 or 20 people, and you've got this cast of characters. You've got the younger couple in the corner who are bickering over he's drinking too much and she wants to go home. You have the loud guy. You have the guy who's on the wagon, he might fall off the wagon. You have the guys talking shop. And in the middle of all this is Greg Fertuck, and he doesn't know that they're all cops. Every single person in that retirement party is speaking for his benefit to achieve a certain end. And now in court, we have these people standing up 15 feet away from Greg Fertuck telling a judge how they tricked him. It's astonishing.
Well, it's been a fascinating 6 weeks. What's next?
Well, we're getting into the meat of it now, Fiona. We're not quite at the end game yet, but we're getting to the real key witnesses. The next big one we all want to see is the interview with the crime boss, where he discloses what he had said he did to Sherry. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is what we've seen so far has been taking place in what's called a voir dire. And this is basically where Justice Richard Daniluk is seeing all of this evidence and testimony and witnesses, and then he has to decide whether the police played by the rules as laid out by the Supreme Court, and this is going to be admitted. So there'll be arguments on that, and then we'll wrap it all up sometime over the next couple of weeks. Fiona?
Thank you so much, Dan. That was CBC's Dan Zakreski in Saskatoon.